Baseball fans, you need to hear this right now because what just went down between the Dodgers and Blue Jays is absolutely insane. We're talking about a post-game controversy that has the entire baseball world divided, and it all centers around one reliever, one home run, and a whole lot of accusations flying back and forth. Jeff Hoffman is at the heart of this storm, and trust me, this story gets wilder the deeper we go. So here's what happened. The Dodgers and Blue Jays faced off in what everyone thought would be just another regular season game. Competitive? Sure, but nobody expected the nuclear fallout we're dealing with now. The game itself was intense from the first pitch. Both lineups came ready to compete, trading punches inning after inning. Great pitching performances on both sides, some questionable strike zone calls that had both benches fired up, and the kind of defensive plays that remind you why these guys are professionals. Toronto carried a narrow one-run advantage into the 8th inning, and that's when everything started unraveling in the most dramatic way possible. Jeff Hoffman was getting loose in the bullpen, doing his usual routine, but apparently he wasn't just stretching and throwing warm-up pitches. According to what came out later, Hoffman was engaged in some serious verbal warfare with the Dodgers dugout. Cameras caught glimpses of animated gestures, players from both sides leaning over the rails, clearly exchanging words that weren't exactly compliments. At the time, most people watching figured it was just typical baseball chatter. Guys get fired up, emotions run high. It's part of what makes the game exciting. Nobody thought it would become the defining storyline of the night. Then Mookie Betts stepped into the batter's box. Now, if you know anything about Mookie, you know he's one of those players who plays with ice in his veins. He doesn't get rattled easily. He doesn't showboat. He just goes out there and does his job at an elite level night after night. But something was different this time. You could see it in his stance, in the way he dug into the box. There was an intensity there that went beyond his usual locked-in focus. 2 pitches into his at-bat, the pitcher made a mistake, left one over the heart of the plate, and Mookie absolutely crushed it. We're talking about a no-doubt home run, the kind where you know it's gone the second it leaves the bat. Left center field, ball soaring into the California night. Dodger Stadium went absolutely ballistic. The crowd noise was deafening. Players erupted from the dugout, and just like that, Los Angeles had flipped the scoreboard in their favor. The momentum shift was instant and devastating for Toronto. That one swing changed everything. The Dodgers rode that energy through the rest of the game and walked away with the victory. Now, in most cases, that would be the end of the story. Great at bat, clutch home run, move on to the next game, but then the post-game press conferences started, and that's when this whole situation exploded into something much bigger. Ryan Pepiot, who had been watching everything unfold from the Dodgers dugout, decided he wasn't going to let the trash talk angle slide. When reporters asked him about the 8th inning rally, Pepiot didn't hold back. He made it crystal clear that the Dodgers heard every word coming from the Blue Jays side. He specifically called out the fact that one of Toronto's relievers had been running his mouth throughout the game, chirping at Dodgers hitters, trying to get under their skin. Pepiot used some choice words. He talked about poking the bear. He said when you disrespect a championship caliber team, you better be ready for the consequences. And then he dropped the bombshell. He named Jeff Hoffman directly, said Hoffman was the one doing most of the talking, said the Dodgers players heard it, took it personally, and used it as fuel. Pepiot went as far as saying that Mookie's home run was essentially payback for the disrespect. He framed it like Hoffman's trash talk directly motivated the game-winning hit. That's a serious accusation. That's basically saying your opponent handed us the victory by running his mouth. The baseball internet immediately lost its mind. Within literally minutes, social media platforms were flooded with reactions. Hoffman Gate started trending on multiple platforms. Fans from both sides jumped into battle. Dodgers supporters were celebrating, talking about how their team responded to adversity with clutch performance. Blue Jays fans were either defending Hoffman's competitive fire or absolutely furious that his words might have cost them the game. The amateur detective work started instantly. People were pulling up every available video angle from the broadcast, slowing down footage, zooming in on dugout shots, trying to read lips, attempting to figure out exactly what was said and when. Some claimed they could make out specific phrases, others said it was impossible to know for sure, but everyone had an opinion. Jeff Hoffman, to his credit, didn't hide from the controversy. A lot of players in his position might have declined comment or given some bland non-answer, but Hoffman faced the media head-on. When reporters asked him about Pepiot's accusations, Hoffman actually smirked. Not in a disrespectful way, but in a way that suggested he wasn't backing down from his approach. He acknowledged that yes, he talks on the field. He said everyone talks. He framed it as just part of baseball culture. Competitive banter, gamesmanship, nothing out of the ordinary. ordinary. And then he delivered a line that made headlines everywhere. He basically said if the Dodgers needed his trash talk as motivation to hit a home run, then good for them. That was it. No apology, no backing down, just a shrug and an implication that maybe the Dodgers were more sensitive than they should be. That response split the baseball community even further. One camp absolutely loved it. They saw it as Hoffman refusing to be intimidated, standing by his competitive nature, showing personality in a sport that sometimes feels too corporate and media trained. These fans argued that baseball needs more characters, more edge, more realness. They pointed to past generations where trash talk was not only common but celebrated. They said Hoffman was keeping that tradition alive. The other camp thought Hoffman looked foolish. They argued that when your trash talk directly precedes your team losing the game, you should probably show some humility. They said his response made it seem like he didn't understand the cause and effect of his actions. Some even suggested it showed immaturity and a lack of awareness about how his behavior impacts the team. Inside the Blue Jays clubhouse, the atmosphere was reportedly complicated. Manager John Schneider gave the typical manager response in his press conference. He talked about playing with passion and emotion. He defended Hoffman as a competitive player who cares deeply about winning, but he also added that they would handle things internally, which is code for we're gonna have a conversation about this behind closed doors. Sources connected to the team suggested that not everyone in that clubhouse was thrilled with how things played out. Veterans on the roster, guys who have been around the league for years, reportedly expressed concern that the trash talk became a distraction and potentially gave their opponent extra motivation in a critical moment. Meanwhile, over in the Dodgers clubhouse, the vibe was completely different. They were eating this up. This was validation. This was proof that their championship mentality means they respond when disrespected. Mookie Betts gave his own post-game interview, and while he didn't go as hard as Pepiot, he definitely didn't shy away from the topic. He confirmed that he heard something from the Blue Jays side. He said he didn't appreciate it, and he said his home run was his way of responding. Classic Mookie, not overly cocky, not unnecessarily aggressive, just supremely confident and willing to acknowledge that external motivation played a role in his performance. His teammates backed him up immediately. Multiple Dodgers players talked about how that moment energized the entire dugout, how it reminded them that they're champions, and champions don't accept disrespect. Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, couldn't have been more pleased with how his team handled the situation. He praised their mental toughness. He specifically said you don't poke champions without expecting a response. He framed it as a teachable moment about what separates good teams from great teams. Great teams, according to Roberts, use everything as motivation. They convert negative energy into performance. They make you pay for any perceived slight. Roberts was basically saying, this is exactly who we are as an organization, and if opponents want to test that, they'll learn the hard way. This incident isn't happening in a vacuum. Context matters here. These two franchises have legitimate recent history. They faced each other in last year's World Series. The tension between these rosters has been building ever since. There are players on both sides who remember every pitch, every big moment, every celebration from that series. The competitive fire between these teams was already simmering just below the surface. This Hoffman situation didn't create the rivalry. It just poured gasoline on flames that were already burning. Now every future meeting between these teams carries extra weight. Every game becomes an opportunity for either side to prove something. For the Dodgers, this becomes bulletin board material they can reference all season. Anytime they face Toronto, someone in that clubhouse will remember Jeff Hoffman talking trash and Mookie Betts making him regret it. For the Blue Jays, this is either a wake-up call or a rallying point, depending on how they choose to frame it internally. They can decide that Hoffman crossed a line and needs to dial it back, or they can decide to embrace the villain role and lean into the edge that competitive trash talk provides. Either way, the next Dodgers-Blue Jays series is must-watch television. You know the ratings will be massive. You know every camera will be focused on Hoffman whenever he's visible. You know fans from both sides will be watching with extra intensity. Toronto fans are genuinely divided on this. Spend any time in Blue Jays social media spaces or sports talk radio, and you'll find passionate arguments on both sides. Some fans absolutely love that Hoffman showed personality and competitive fire. They argue that this young Blue Jays core needs that edge to compete with established powerhouses like the Dodgers. They say baseball is too soft now, too corporate, too afraid of controversy. They want their players to have swagger and confidence, even if it occasionally backfires. These fans are ready to ride with Hoffman through whatever criticism comes his way. They see him as a player who genuinely cares and competes with everything he has. On the flip side, many Blue Jays fans are frustrated and embarrassed. They watch their team lose a crucial game, and now the story isn't about the game itself, but about their relievers' trash talk. They're annoyed that Hoffman gave the opposition extra motivation. They're worried about how this makes the organization look. They're concerned that this becomes a distraction from the on-field product. Some are calling for the coaching staff to have a serious conversation with Hoffman about when competitive fire crosses into counterproductive behavior. These fans just want to win games and feel like this situation made that harder. Dodgers fans, predictably, are loving every single second of this. Los Angeles supporters have fully embraced the narrative. Within hours of the game ending, merchandise was already being produced. Shirts with references to not poking the bear. Graphics featuring Mookie's home run swing with captions about responding to trash talk. The creativity of sports merchandise producers never ceases to amaze. Dodgers fans are flooding social media with highlight clips of the home run, always accompanied by some reference to Hoffman's words coming back to haunt him. They're treating this like a teaching moment for the entire league. Mess with the Dodgers and you'll pay the price. Sports media personalities across the country have been discussing this non-stop. Radio shows dedicated entire segments to debating whether Hoffman was out of line. Television analysts broke down the dugout footage frame by frame. Podcasters brought on former players to weigh in on trash talk culture in baseball. The opinions are all over the map. Some former players defend Hoffman completely, saying that talking trash is fundamental to competing at the highest level. They share stories from their own careers about bench jockeying and verbal warfare being standard practice. They argue that if you can't handle words, you're in the wrong profession. Other ex-players take the opposite stance. They say there's a difference between competitive chatter and giving your opponent fuel. They emphasize that timing matters, and talking trash while your team is trying to protect a lead is asking for trouble. One particularly interesting take came from a veteran baseball analyst who pointed out that this situation reveals something about modern baseball culture. He argued that the game has become so statistically driven and analytically focused that the human element sometimes gets overlooked. Players are humans. Emotions matter. Psychology matters. When you create negative emotional energy directed at elite competitors, they might just use that energy to destroy you. According to this analyst, Hoffman made a classic mistake. He assumed his words would either have no effect or would get into his opponent's heads in a negative way. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. The Dodgers converted that negative energy into laser focus and clutch performance. The Blue Jays have an off day coming up, which might actually be a blessing in disguise for them. It gives the organization time to address this internally without the immediate pressure of another game. You can absolutely guarantee that coaching staff will be having conversations with Hoffman. Maybe it's a simple reminder about situational awareness. Maybe it's a deeper discussion about competitive mentality and team impact. Whatever happens behind closed doors, the next time Hoffman appears in a game, every camera will be trained on him. Every comment he makes to the media will be analyzed for any hint of whether his approach has changed. For Toronto as a whole, this is a defining moment for their season. Young teams go through situations like this. It's part of development. How they respond will tell us a lot about their championship potential. Do they rally around Hoffman and use this as motivation? Do they fragment and let it become a distraction? Does the leadership in that clubhouse step up and turn this into a learning experience? Championship teams find ways to convert adversity into strength. The Blue Jays have talent. Everyone knows that, but talent alone doesn't win championships. Mental toughness, unity, the ability to handle controversy, those things matter just as much. The truth is, baseball is always better when there's legitimate tension between teams. Fans engage more. Games matter more. The storylines become richer. Hoffman poked. Mookie answered. The Dodgers celebrated. Toronto has to deal with the aftermath. and all of us as baseball fans get to enjoy the drama. Whether you think Hoffman was right or wrong, you can't deny this made the sport more interesting. This is the kind of organic controversy that you can't manufacture. It happened naturally in the heat of competition between two teams that genuinely want to beat each other. So where does this leave us? Hoffman has established himself as a lightning rod. Some will love him for his competitive edge. Others will criticize him every time Toronto loses a close game. The Dodgers have added another chapter to their championship narrative. They've reminded everyone that they respond to disrespect with dominance. The Blue Jays have a decision to make about their identity. Are they the team that backs down when things get heated, or are they going to embrace the competitive fire and learn how to channel it more effectively? The rest of the league is watching. You better believe other teams are paying attention to how this plays out. Looking ahead, every Toronto-Los Angeles matchup for the foreseeable future carries extra significance. When these teams meet again, whether it's later this season or in the playoffs, this moment will be referenced. Commentators will bring it up, fans will remember, players definitely won't forget. That's the beautiful thing about baseball rivalries. They're built on moments exactly like this, not manufactured by marketing departments, but created organically through competition, emotion, and human nature. Hoffman versus the Dodgers is now a subplot worth following for however long both sides remain competitive. The baseball community thrives on debate, and this situation provides endless material. Was Hoffman out of line? Should teams discourage trash talk? Does competitive chatter make the game better or worse? Is there a difference between good-natured ribbing and actually trying to show up your opponent? These questions don't have simple answers, and that's why the conversation continues. Different perspectives based on different experiences and different values. Some grew up playing in eras where trash talk was not only accepted but expected. Others came up in more controlled environments where letting your play speak was emphasized. What's undeniable is that Jeff Hoffman, willingly or not, has become the face of this controversy. His name is attached to one of the season's most memorable moments, and not necessarily in the way he would have preferred. Athletes talk all the time about controlling what you can control. Hoffman controlled his words. He chose to engage in verbal warfare with one of baseball's best teams. What he couldn't control was how they would respond, and they responded in the most devastating way possible, with a clutch home run that won the game and created a viral story that will follow him for a long time. For fans who love baseball drama, this is premium content. For purists who just want to focus on the game itself, this might feel like an unnecessary distraction, but that's sports. It's not just about statistics and outcomes. It's about personalities, emotions, conflicts, and resolutions. It's about human beings competing at the highest level under intense pressure, sometimes making decisions that don't work out the way they hoped. Hoffman made a decision. The Dodgers made him pay. Now everyone gets to discuss whether that decision was worth it, whether lessons were learned, and what it means for everyone involved moving forward.